Welcome back to Faye's World of Fiction 2.0. I'm here today to talk about Wally Lamb, for starters. She's Come Undone by Wally Lamb. I've read this book twice, actually, accidentally. One of my reading buddies came to me and said, "Oh, have you read this book?" And I said, "I don't think I have." And I started reading it, and there was a scene with a parakeet, and I was like, "I think I've read this before," but it was so good I couldn't put it down the second time as well. So Dolores Price has an unusual family with a lot of eccentricities. This well-told narrative follows her life through her trials and tribulations to her ultimate rebirth after coming undone. Get it? She's come undone. You can't help but root for Dolores, and sometimes the reader can get a little bit attached to the character and see a little bit of themselves in her life. So it's really a great read. Meg, do you have another book that you would like to talk about?
Yes, I actually
also by Wally Lamb?
Yes. I have been dying to read this book forever now. It's called I Know This Much Is True, and by our favorite author,
Wally Lamb.
Yes.
He's going to be at the Brookline Booksmith, by the way, next month, I think. It's exciting. Or is it this month? I don't know. We'll have to check the schedule.
Wow. This is an excellent novel. It's about two twin brothers, Dominic and his house painter, and the former history teacher. And Thomas is a paranoid schizophrenic, which I would love to hear more about, and his, what he's thinking about and feelings.
Because twins, you'd think they would be the same, but one's got paranoid schizophrenia and the other is
Exactly. Their relationship is strong, and having bonded through a rather difficult upbringing, and an encouraged storyline follows the paths of the brothers and how far the bond of the family can stretch. Their mother leaves them a manuscript that his father practically dictated and handwrote. In these pages is a family history that allows Dominic to get in touch with his history in order to help his future. A highly recommended book for the voracious reader, and as a novel is close to 900 pages.
But it really is an excellent story, isn't it?
We will fly by that.
My friend Lindsay here also is here to talk about the third Wally Lamb book. By the way, anything he writes is absolutely to die for.
Alright, so this book is called The Hour I First Believe, another Wally Lamb book. Now, Wally Lamb certainly did his homework with this one. He consulted numerous nonfiction articles, books, and essays about Columbine. He created a fictional character named Maureen, who was crouched in a cabinet while Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris opened fire. The book follows her descent into post-traumatic stress disorder while her husband tries to help as best he can. There is a somewhat boring part in the middle when it delves into the character's background, family life, but other than that, it was a very engaging read.
I'm going to have to agree with you. It was excellent. It was almost made you feel like you were there experiencing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. The next book I'd like to talk about is by Dennis Lehane. Handsome guy, right? Dennis Lehane wrote The Given Day and other books as well. There are three stories intertwined in this lengthy novel about Danny Coughlin, who's a Boston police officer, Luther Lawrence, who is an African-American man who has run into a bit of trouble, and none other than Babe Ruth, professional baseball player. The novel takes place at a time when race relations make for some unrest in the city of Boston, where Luther's life intertwines with Danny's, and each storyline is extremely well developed. It's obvious that Lehane did his fair share of research to tell the story, and highlights include the riots when the police go on strike in 1919 in Boston, and Luther's pivotal involvement in some life-saving instances. My husband actually read this book 2 times, so highly recommended. Other Lehane books as well, like Shutter Island, will really blow your mind. My friend Maddie is here to talk about While I Was Gone by Sue Miller. Tell us.
This novel is about a middle-aged woman married with children whose veterinarian practice causes her to come in contact with someone from her past. She is reminded of her former life in which she donned on alias to get away from her first husband.
Ooh, scary.
She is brought to the brink of having an affair when someone from her past, a plot twist if you will, brings about an unexpected result. This is a well-written novel and lets the reader feel for her characters.
Excellent. Excellent choice, Maddie.
Yes,
Thank you.
It's fabulous.
I would say Sue Miller is not quite as talented as one of my favorite authors, Ian McEwan. Atonement, finally a writer that challenges the genius of Virginia Woolf. McEwan's style is reminiscent of Woolf's in that he paints a picture of a scene from multiple shifts in narrative in order to give an alternative perspective of an event in the life of Bryony Tallis. She will literally spend the rest of her life in atonement. The word atonement means at one with God. Very strange. I was curious how the movie version would pan out because it's just so detailed. There's an event that happens that is just shocking, and to see it from multiple perspectives is wonderful. It is a love story that's told in the landscape of World War I, and the descriptions of the injured soldiers are exceptionally good, and they make the stomach turn, so it's got a little bit of something for everyone. Atonement by Ian McEwan. I told you I was in love with Ian McEwan, and I wasn't kidding. I've literally read every book that he has written. This one, called Enduring Love, follows the main character. He actually witnesses a hot air balloon accident. One of the other characters ends up stalking him very enthusiastically, and there's a very tense situation, and it's a thriller. Not as good as Atonement, of course, and Saturday, but still highly recommended. Victoria, would you like to talk about his other novel called Saturday?
I guess I should start by admitting that I'm in love with the writing styles of this author.
I agree.
He does not merely glance over topics, he explores them in a very deep manner, a manner which sets the reader to thinking about his or her own views of the topic. It is evident from the novel that McEwan does a lot of thorough research while writing these pieces. This novel is about a day in the life of Henry Perone,
Yeah.
a neurosurgeon. It starts with his awakening in the wee hours of a Saturday morning in the chronicles of events of his Saturday.
One Saturday. Yeah, it's about one day, literally 24 hours, the crazy things that happen. It's insane. People come, something happens, there's a little car accident, out of control. Wasn't it very interesting?
Very engaging.
Very interesting and engaging.
19 Minutes by Jodi Picoult is one of my favorites. I can see why so many young adults like her style of writing. It's pretty straightforward, although a bit wordy at times, and bogged down with numerous details. This novel chronicles an episode of violence, 10 murders I believe, by a high school student in Sterling, New Hampshire on a rampage. Josie Cormier and Peter Houghton are two former friends whose lives diverge when Josie decides to be popular, thereby sacrificing her friendship with the geeky Peter. Josie's relationship with her boyfriend is a bit disturbing at times, and there's a plot twist at the very end which will either leave the reader somewhat shocked or somewhat satisfied that all was lost when it came to the friendship of this unlikely pair.
Alright, now I'm going to tell you about King Dork by Frank Portman. Okay, the writing style of this novel is most suited to a high school age audience. There are numerous references to Catcher in the Rye, and the book itself is narrated by a Holden-type character in Tom Henderson. Entertainment Weekly said, "No account of high school has made me laugh more than King Dork. Grade A." Now, I wouldn't go that far. In fact, I don't remember laughing at all. Maybe I was disappointed by the sensual scenes, which I'm sure our librarian has not read yet. Otherwise, it would probably be banned from a 30-mile radius of any school ever. Nevertheless, there are some funny lines about phys ed classes that your typical high school student might find amusing. As for myself, I'm not sure I'd read any more by this author. Alright, The Book Thief is a book by Marcus Zusak. Becky Hayes raved about this book and said it was her all-time favorite. And after making my way through 550 pages in only 5 days, I can definitely see why. Although it's narrated by Death, there is a glimmer of hope at the end of the story. Death does a masterful job of telling the story of Liesel Meminger, a young girl who lived during the Holocaust. Most of the novel takes place during 1942 and 1943 in war-torn Germany. Death gives the reader a bird's-eye glimpse over the lives of the people who become involved in Liesel's life. Death's last line in the book is, "I am haunted by humans." And the big message there is because usually humans think we're haunted by death, but maybe if Death were a person, he'd think that he's haunted by humans.
Oh yeah, I remember about reading about that book last year.
Yeah, it's also a movie now, and it's doing very well.
And my book is called Before I Fall by Lauren Oliver. This book had a haunting effect on me as Sam Kingston relives her last day of life over and over again. I felt compelled to read this book because it just kept me reading until the wee hours of the morning. While the novel is a work of fiction, one can't help but draw into the storyline and believe that maybe it's not too late to change after all. It was a really quick read for me, and although it's for a school-aged audience, anyone could read it, and the message from the author is timeless.
That sounds really cool. Now the other one we have is called The Center of Everything by Laura Moriarty. Now it's about Evelyn, who is a young girl who's growing up with a single mother in the middle of Kansas, which is a very boring state right in the middle of the U.S. This engaging novel is the type of book you won't want to put down once you become involved in the story. Moriarty does an excellent job of portraying a young girl's adolescent angst, and I think everyone can relate to that and recognize some of the problems that Evelyn has with self-esteem, friends, crushes, and her hopes of getting out of her seemingly hopeless situation, and it's an excellent read.
Sounds like a very interesting book.
Yep. So I'm Lindsay Glover,
And I'm Phil Hajar.
and we're here with Hanover's Books.
Hello. We're here to talk about some books that we have to offer you. The first one is called Half-Broke Horses by Jeanette Walls. This book is fittingly titled after the author's grandmother, Lily Casey Smith, who grew up in Texas during the Great Depression. Famous for writing her own personal memoirs, The Glass Castle, Walls set above chronologically the life of her mother, but found that the life of her grandmother took up most of the research. Isn't that right?
Yep.
So cool. This could evaluate most of the sources and stories, but some were a bit rebellious, so the book remains a true life novel as opposed to a biography. Lily certainly is someone to be admired for her courage and strength of spirit growing up at a time when options for women were limited. She helped her father break horses, learn to travel, and even learn to fly. If you like The Glass Castle, you'll appreciate the author's writing style, although the story is not quite as gripping as the author's memoir.
That's good, Megan.
Thank you. So what do you have here today, Vic?
I have Big Mouth Ugly Girl by Joyce Carol Oates. At first,
I wonder who that is.
At first, this novel was slow going, but after the big incident at school where Ursula stood up for Matt, the relationship has become very interesting. It is a book that may appeal to the high school audience more so than adults. The inner dialogue of Ursula is a bit confusing at first because she calls herself the ugly girl, and Matt comes to call himself Big Mouth. Not my favorite, but not terrible either. The later half of the book is definitely better than the beginning.
Cool. And so also we have this book, The Master, by Colum Tobian. I really want to read this. It seems so interesting. It's a novel of a biography, but it's not a biography. From what was known of Henry James' life and letters, Tobian has pieced together a literary piece about the lifestyle of his exiled American writers who takes up residence in England. He spends an awkward night with Constance as well as scripter Henrik. His attempts in relationships have failed sometimes, but often with less than desirable results. His family relationships are also seemingly brought to life, somewhat explained. When you further read the book, these are described in enlightened detail as if one were living as James' close companion.
That was cute.
Thank
I
you.
might want to read it.
I know, me too. It sounds so cool. What else do you have?
I have Olive Kittredge by Elizabeth Strout. This novel had the same message as Thornton Wilder's Our Town. Day after day is unconsciously squandered. Strout writes that Olive ruminates over the fact that she possibly did not fully enjoy and love that her late husband Henry. However, in the end, Olive comes to several realizations about the potential of the life and potential for accepting what life has to offer us. This novel is told several points of view. In several points of view, the Oliver self ties them all together. A very interesting commentary on the simple plights of us human as we try to make the best of what happens in our lives. A truly great read for the mature reader.
These books seem very interesting.
Thank you for listening to Fiction 2.0. Over the holiday break, I'm going to be reading a few of these books, so I'll have more to talk about next time. Thanks.